Earlier today, the MMA community was hit with some very shocking and some very sad news. At only 38 years of age, Anthony "Rumble" Johnson has passed away. And everywhere you look online, there's been an outpouring of remembrances and condolences, courtesy of family members, friends, former teammates, and even former opponents. And the general consensus has been that even though Anthony "Rumble" Johnson was one of the scariest men inside of the octagon, that was contrasted almost perfectly by how good of a person he was outside of it and how big of a heart he had. Now, as a fan that didn't know him personally, I can't exactly comment on the latter part of what I just said, except to say that I really hope that's true, and I really want it to be true. But what I can do is give you two specific moments from his career that impacted me that I'll probably remember forever. And I wish I could attach the videos here to go along with the moments, but even in a time like this, UFC, YouTube, the copyright system is just something I will always tread lightly with. So the first moment happened during the fight finale for the Ultimate Fighter 6, and it involved an opponent named Tommy Spear. Now, just to give you a bit of backstory, a bit of context, Tommy Spear was supposed to be a pretty badass dude coming out of that show. He was the second best after a guy named Mac Danzig, and people were looking at him as like a powerhouse, right? He was like a welterweight Brock Lesnar. He was a farm boy. He was super strong. His wrestling was really good, and he had power in his hands. There was a lot of high hopes for him from the UFC brass, and his first opponent in the UFC ended up being Anthony "Rumble" Johnson, a very drawn-out Anthony "Rumble" Johnson at 170 pounds. And when the fight started, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're giving him, a guy that I've never really heard of before, that I guess fought in the UFC once or twice, but, whatever. I guess it's a little layup for him to introduce him to a company. Anthony just mauled him, just beat the shit out of him from pillar to post to the point where I really felt bad for the guy. And that was like such a holy shit moment, and that was the fight that introduced me to Anthony "Rumble" Johnson forever. Like, whenever I seen his name pop up after that, or whenever I saw his picture or just seen him on screen, I instantly remember who that was. That was the guy that just smashed Tommy Spear. I mean, he looked terrifying in that fight. The second moment was his fight against Ryan Bader, and the reason why that was so significant for me is because I've never seen a professional high-level fighter be so scared of another fighter live. Like, it was palpable, right? So when Ryan Bader faced off against Anthony "Rumble" Johnson, it started out as a fight, and it ended up being an assault with one guy covering his head, just looking like, he hopes that it was over 10 minutes ago. I mean, it was crazy. Like, he was petrified. Like, you could see it right on his face. And that kind of defined Rumble for me, right? Like, that's who Rumble was. He was the scariest knockout artist in the light heavyweight division. You can talk about Francis Ngannou, you can talk about, I guess, Alex Pereira recently, or whoever else was considered a big knockout puncher. None of them had the aura that Rumble possessed at 205 pounds. I mean, he was terrifying. So those are the memories that stick out in my mind immediately when I think of Rumble. Drop yours in the comments down below if you want. And I guess I just want to say that just remember, and I've been very guilty of this too, that even if a fighter isn't necessarily your favorite fighter, there's a big chance that, if you got to know them, they could turn out to be your favorite person. It's not that serious. It's just fighting, guys. It's just a sport. So when we as fans say things like, oh, I hate him, oh, he's a piece of shit, or I just want him to lose, just remember, you're just talking about one single small sliver of a person's life. Every one of these guys has people that they love and people that love them. So I guess it's just something to keep in mind when talking about stuff like that in the future. And I guess that's just kind of all I wanted to say. All right, I'll see you guys soon.